The issue that everybody keeps talking about, at least on Twitter, is the ratings are going down. And people say, well, it's because it's happening during football season and blah, 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 blah. And, NASCAR's raced during football season for many, many years, and ratings continue to go down. So if you ask me today what the number one problem is with NASCAR, and they asked this question on the teardown, and they said star power is you don't have the stars that you used to have. While I agree that that's a contributing factor, if you ask me what the number one problem would be, it would be the product on the racetrack. That's the problem. And it's not that it's not close racing, it's not that it's not hard racing, it's the race car.
Following is a production of
the garage area.
All right, welcome into the garage area after the Kansas race this weekend, where Chase Elliott backs into a win this weekend and ends up getting his position advanced into the next round. Ryan was pretty ecstatic, obviously. He was jumping around like a schoolgirl, I'm sure. And we actually saw a pretty decent race as a whole, and now we see Chase Elliott and Ryan Blaney advancing into the next round, and some other guys in a pretty good point situation that are probably going to be able to make it as well. Ryan, what'd you make of the race as a whole? Did it meet your expectations? Did you think that obviously you were pretty excited that Chase won, but what about the racing itself? In the past we've had decent races at Kansas, but in this past spring race, it was a bit of a snoozer. Kyle Larson dominated it. And Denny Hamlin dominated this one, but I personally feel better about the fall race than I did the spring one. What did you think?
Um, I think comparing the two races this year, the fall race was a better race. There was still that little bit of the snooze fest to it. You can tell dirty air really mattered. I mean, earlier when Chase got the lead on a restart, it took Denny Hamlin many tries to get by him. Every time Denny kind of sucked up behind Chase, he'd lose the air out of his car and lose a half a second and then have to regain his position until the tires wore out. And Denny obviously had the faster car, and it probably shouldn't have been that hard for him to pass him. But I felt like I had a little bit higher expectations than what we got, other than maybe the ending of the race made it more exciting than the race as a whole was.
Well, I felt like tires mattered a little more in this race than they did, well, at a lot of racetracks recently. Did you get that feeling too, or not really?
Um, I didn't really get it. I mean, obviously tires did matter a bit. I mean, if you on pit cycles and stuff, if a driver pitted a lap or two earlier, they gained time on the guy ahead of them that maybe waited for the pit stop. But some of them guys on two tires that stayed out on two tires and whatnot and stuff still probably held on better than they should have.
Did you vote in the Jeff Gluck poll today?
No, I didn't see it.
You didn't see the poll at all?
No.
Do you have a guess as to where the yes vote is, as to whether or not it was a good race?
I don't know, 70%?
70%?
Yeah.
Higher.
Really?
Yeah.
75?
Higher.
85?
Higher.
90?
It was a 91% yes vote
Wow.
out of 19,000 votes.
Yeah. I mean, the ending was great. I'll give it that for sure. If I'd have voted, I'd have voted yes, because, I mean, you got to take the ending into account of how it all worked out because it's part of the race. But, I mean, I guess I'm still stuck on the car's performance overall. But
Yeah, I agree with that. I don't really have a running list, so to speak, in my phone, but I do have it in my head of things that I want to cover this off season, because I want us to be able to continue to do shows during the off season. Uh, I I have some certain topics in mind, and that's where I don't want to get into this too deep on our week to week stuff, race recap shows. But uh, I think that if you ask, for example, the um, issue that everybody keeps talking about, at least on Twitter, is the ratings are going down, and people say, well, it's because it's happening during football season and blah 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 blah, and NASCAR's raced during football season for many many years, and ratings continue to go down. So if you ask me today what the number one problem is with NASCAR, and they asked this question on the teardown, and they said star power is you don't have the stars that you used to have. While I agree that that's a contributing factor, if you ask me what the number one problem would be, it would be the product on the racetrack. That's the problem. And it's not that it's not close racing, it's not that it's not hard racing, it's it's the race car. I mean, that's what it is. It's that dirty air wake that is a big time problem, in my opinion. So the reason that I say all that is to say that if I'm grading on a curve, knowing that, hey, you run this race 100 times with the next gen car, what would you say that this was a good race with this race car? I'd say, yeah, it was. So I did vote yes in the poll. Do I think it was a 91 percenter? No, I don't think it was that high, but I do think that it was overall a pretty decent race. In fact, if I were going to put my rating on it, I would say that I'd give it a 7 out of 10. Where would you land on this one?
That was about what I was thinking. I was trying to compare it last week to New Hampshire, and um, where we gave that one a 7. I think the on track product was decent last week. I think I'm right on board with a 7 with that too.
Okay, well, we're pretty similar then. And I think that for the most part, we have been all year, haven't we?
I think there's been a few different times we've been a couple off, but we've been pretty
Pretty close.
close.
Yeah. It's almost like we have kind of the same opinion on the sport as a whole. Uh, but yeah, that was a pretty decent race for Kansas. Kansas typically provides, at least in the next gen car, one of the better races. And in the spring, I was a little concerned that we weren't going to see that again in the fall. And I picked Kyle Larson to win, and obviously he didn't end up getting it done. But that it wasn't the same type of race, even though you still had one driver that was pretty dominant. It just seemed more entertaining to me. Like there was a little more action throughout the day than there was in the spring. But like I said, I picked Kyle Larson, and he finished where?
6,
And you had Chase Briscoe. Where did he end up?
4th.
Fourth. We're on a little bit of a drought here recently with picking a winner. It's been one, two, three, 4 races since we've been able to, one of us, pick the correct winning driver. You had a pretty good stretch there with SVG in the summer. And if I had to take a wild guess, it's probably your pick this weekend.
Well, we made it so we had to pick drivers in the playoffs, so
Ooh, yeah. I forgot about that little wrinkle. I forgot about that little wrinkle.
it'll be tough.
But to be fair, we're both sitting here right now saying we think that SVG will win this race.
Yeah, pretty much,
Okay.
or at least be
Um,
highly competitive. So
oh, you don't necessarily think he'll win it.
I don't know. I think he will, but I just remember he raced there last year. Maybe that gives him even more of an advantage. He'd already been there, but I just I know Kyle Larson pretty much dominated last year, so I feel like some of the Cup drivers. Well, we say that at every track that's been on the Cup circuit for a while, but I don't know. Maybe his advantage might not be as much this weekend, but
Shane Van Gisbergen was the meat and a Hendrick sandwich at one point yesterday, and he still came back to finish 10th at Kansas.
I mean he was a lap down at Kansas and finished 10th, so I mean he ran really good, but
That's my point.
yeah,
And I'm thinking he might lap the field at the Roval, is what I'm thinking. I don't think that there's any doubt that if he has a non-issue throughout the day, that he's going to be the winner.
yeah.
I don't know.
I don't know. We'll find out, I
My
guess.
confidence with him is really, really high.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I'll be interested to see how that works out. Um, yeah, I forgot about us having to pick guys that are still in the playoffs. Uh, this is one of those times when that's kind of a bummer. Um, Speaking of the playoffs, before we actually get to, well, no, let's just do it. Let's just do the end of the race right now. So Your second favorite driver, Denny Hamlin, ended up dominating the race pretty much. He won the first and second stage. I think he had the fastest lap, didn't he?
Yeah,
And he led 159 laps, which was by far the most on the day. Christopher Bell led 43. That looks like the second most from what I'm seeing here. Um, he he just was the class of the field all day long. And mind you, he was doing this with a pit crew that was struggling. And they weren't terrible, but he had the two crew members, correct?
I believe so. Yeah,
That got ejected because of the loose wheel at Bristol. They delayed it to this race here at Kansas. I guess they thought that their on track product was going to outrun the pit road errors, and it almost did. But they had a stop earlier in the day where the pit crew got Denny behind. Denny got the lead back, was clicking off laps again, and amidst his power steering issues and other things on the final stop of the day, a two tire stop, they ended up not being able to get the car jacked up, and it put Denny back to like sixth, I think, from the lead. Uh, and he still, even with all of that traffic, kind of had the perfect storm come together for him to get a big run and make an attempt to pass Bubba Wallace going into turn three. And well, I'll just say what happened, and then I want to talk about it a little bit. He went into turn three, and basically the car didn't turn, and he gets into Bubba Wallace. Bubba bounces off the wall. Denny cranks the car all the way to the bottom, bounces off the nine, but the nine had so much momentum that he was able to just keep it rolling and backed into his second win of the season,
yeah.
and ends up advancing in the playoffs because of it. Uh, Chase Elliott, one of the more consistent drivers in the field, still, I think of your quote from a few weeks ago that consistency is not going to win you this championship. You got to win races. And even though it was kind of I don't know what to call it, he won the race. Uh, Even though circumstances kind of played into him winning the race, he did end up getting the win and moves on into the next round guaranteed, which I don't know what his points position was coming into this, but I don't think he was really in any threat of being in a bad spot going into the Roval anyway.
He was only plus 14 when coming into Kansas, and he was only gonna be about plus another 20 or something going into the Roval. But had he not won this race, he'd have finished top
Another
five or
20.
yeah,
So he would have been plus 34 going into the Roval roughly.
no, like 24.
Oh, I see.
Yeah,
Which is still a pretty sizable chunk.
yeah,
Okay. So, did you listen to Denny's podcast today?
yeah,
So you heard his explanation as to what happened.
yeah.
So I'll state it for those that didn't listen, and you can help fill in any blanks that I've got missing here. From what I understand Denny to say, uh, he went into turn three without a good realization as to where the 23 car was. And he thought that there was more distance between the two of them. And as they made their way through three and into the center of the corners, he did not have the downforce that he thought he was going to have. And as he was turning the wheel, he wasn't turning the car at the same rate that he was planning on having it turn, and ended up making contact with the 23 and putting him into the fence. Is that basically what he said?
Yeah, basically, I think in that Bubba also held it tight to his door in the same manner. So
Okay. Yeah. Um, and he's having an issue with his steering locking up at a certain point. And he wasn't having a power steering issue in the sense that he had lost power steering, but it would lock at a certain angle unless you pulled it the rest of the way through that point. Is kind of my understanding of his explanation there. And after he got away from Bubba, he got clear down to the inside where the nine car had a run, and they also made contact. So I guess basically Denny makes contact with the 23 and the 9 in the same set of corners. Doesn't really wreck either car and doesn't win the race. So this isn't an Austin Dillon situation, so to speak, but contact was made. My first question is, do you believe Denny's explanation was honest? And do you believe that he was honestly trying to stay off both cars that he made contact with?
Um, I don't know if he was really. I know he definitely went down and bumped into the nine. I think that was intentional. I don't think he was going to try and wreck the nine or anything to that extent. But I really believe there's part of him that really drove into 3 and 4 harder, trying to get by Bubba, and that influenced him driving up into him in the same manner Bubba was holding it tight to him to get him loose and may try to get him out of the throttle. Um, I think it's just a combination of everything that went wrong for Denny right there. You definitely seen him come down and bump the nine. I think that was kind of intentional. With the 23, I think he. I don't want to say I don't think he meant to bump into the side of him, but he definitely drove in harder, and it was harder for him to handle the car.
Yeah. Um, Denny says that he has the data to back it up, that he drove to the same point in the corner. He didn't drive it in any harder than he had been. You buying that?
Um, I mean, he turned around the SMT or whatever data that he had, but I don't know anybody that understands it enough that's gonna tell me right away. But um, I could say it proved that he was off the throttle at that point, but I still think he probably drove in over what he normally would have, but maybe not by much, but a little bit more than enough that it affected his corner just a bit.
All right, so we agree that, this is the last lap. You're racing for the win. Do you think that Denny did anything wrong in that situation?
I I don't have anything wrong with how he did everything. I just kind of the fact that the nine was there and took away went away from both of them. I think it's more of a fluke that the nine got by everybody that last lap and won the race than it is than had they been just them two, it would have been probably between those two for the win. So to me, I think Danny did everything he needed to do. He even said on his podcast he gets paid a lot of money to win with the 11 car. Joe Gibbs
Yeah.
pays him money to win with that car, not to help his team, not help Denny's team. So um, to me, everything was fair in that moment.
Okay. Um, I agree with you. I don't think that Denny did anything wrong. I think that racing for the win is all's fair. I don't believe that he made intentional contact with either car. Um, I'm willing to take Denny at his word because it just would have been stupid for him to go in there and intentionally try to make contact with the 23. Like I just don't think that, Denny's won a ton of races this year, and I know that he talked about that being number 60 and that meaning a lot to him, but just I can't see him going in there and door slamming Bubba for his 60th win for, a race that he didn't need to win to advance. Like if this was a cutoff race, maybe, and he was in a position where he needed that spot, I could see something like that being intentional, but I have no reason to suspect that here. So with all that in mind, if I were a jury, I'd say not guilty on Denny. I don't think that he did anything uh, out of line there. I do think that his car was a handful because of the steering issue, and I think that, we talk all the time about these cars being in bad aero situations, and I think that he just found himself in one. I find it hard to believe that he didn't understand where the 23 car was because it seems like that would be a critical moment to know that. And while he may not be able to like physically look over his shoulder and see, I still think that his spotter should have been able to paint him a clear enough picture for him to understand that. And I didn't go back and listen to any of his radio or anything to know what the spotter was saying, but I just don't have any reason to be critical of Denny in that spot there. But let me ask you this. Let's say the same situation, but let's change the race cars. Okay. So let's say that the 23 is still the 23, still Bubba Wallace, still in a spot where he needs to win. Um, but let's say the 11 is the 77. Let's say that's Carson Hocevar instead of Denny Hamlin. Do you still think if that was the 77 instead of the 11 that he did nothing wrong?
Um, I think he would do nothing wrong going for his first win. I mean, to me, that's the whole goal of racing is to win the race. I mean, it doesn't matter who's playoffs or this or that. He has no affiliation with Toyota, so if anything, he's helping Chevrolet going for the win, removing Toyota. So I understand with his reputation, people might be up in arms over it, but to me, he would be doing nothing wrong.
Okay. So you see it as just a hard racing incident no matter who the drivers are.
Yeah,
Okay. That's kind of my honesty check. I plug in either Carson Hocevar or Ty Gibbs and see if I would be mad about that situation or not if it was for those two. Uh, but yes, I agree. I don't think that Denny did anything wrong. And if it was the 77, I would think, man, what an idiot. How do you not have a better sense of what your car is going to do? But because it's Denny and it's his years of experience, I'm like, oh, he must not have been able to hang on to it. That's my only difference in judgment there, but I don't see anything wrong with what took place. So a little bit of a chaotic ending there, but Chase ends up getting the win. Denny finishes second, and Bubba falls all the way back to fifth. Denny was kind of skirting around it on his show and saying that, Bubba didn't call him a name and basically say that it was a stupid move that he pulled. Um, from what I saw of his interview, and I didn't rewatch it after I heard Denny's comments, I'm pretty sure that he was saying that his move was stupid. I don't think that he was even saying that, the old me would have said, no, I think he was saying here today in 2025, that was dumb.
yeah, um, yeah. Post race, there's a picture of Bubba with his hand out the car window, giving him the number one down the back straightaway after the race.
Yeah. And Denny said he didn't have an issue with that because he was flipping off the driver of the 11 and not his team owner.
Yeah,
That kind of speaks to the complexity of the situation that Denny's in, which I do have some understanding for. But I'm not pro flipping the bird for any reason, but in their two situation, I can see why that wouldn't necessarily bother Denny. Like I get it. So I don't really think that there's like trouble in paradise or anything like that. I don't think you're gonna read that, the 23 is out of a driver here shortly. Um, anything else that you wanted to say about the race itself before we kind of talk about the playoff picture?
um, I really don't have anything else about the race. No.
Okay. Um, I guess since we got to talk about your driver, we'll talk about mine for just a second. Joey Logano, like we said last week, here come the yellow cars, or Chris Gabehart said it, and we titled our podcast that last week. Uh, I believe the 12 had a speeding penalty, but he wasn't running too bad. He was running somewhere up there in the top 10. He ended up finishing 24th. But Joey Logano ends up finishing 21st after getting spun um, by Noah Gregson, whatever took place on that restart there. After, I believe that was after the caution for JJ Yeley, and they had the final pit stop, if I'm not mistaken,
Yeah, I'm not 100% sure. Somewhere in there, yeah.
somewhere in that time frame. And Joey was running at the back half of the top 10 all day. He'd run between 6th and 10th. He was never really a top 5 car, but he was somewhere around there all day long. And definitely not a threat for the win, but was going to get stage points. In fact, I'm not sure where he ended up finishing in the stages. Um, he did get stage points in both stages. So he was running in that position all day and just doesn't end up getting the result that he probably deserved there. Uh, Goes in to the Roval, the first car above the cut in eighth place, plus 13 over Ross Chastain. Do you think that that was was his bad luck for this round, or do you think that he's going to have an uphill battle here at the Roval?
Um, he's definitely got a race for stage points at the Roval. I won't know. He's not one of the guys that I would see him as a good Roval or road course driver. So, um, I think really the only one he's got to worry about is Ross Chastain as far as points go. Um, Bubba, I mean, depending on where he's running when the stages pop up, if he doesn't flip the stages like most everyone else might, he could go out and get them points. I think Bubba is a better. I think both Bubba and Ross are better than Joey on the road courses. But um, if Joey doesn't get stage points and Ross finishes top five in a couple stages, then it'll be a tight battle. So I think Joey's got to be a little bit worried this weekend.
Okay. So I'm glad to hear you say that because that was kind of my original assumption as well. Um, First of all, let's kind of paint the picture here. Austin Cindric minus 48, Tyler Reddick minus 29, Bubba Wallace minus 26. They've more than likely got to win the race if they're going to advance. And that's what made that position for Bubba Wallace getting kind of door slammed there so much more painful because he had an opportunity to advance and he's been running really, really well as the playoffs have started. And now he just doesn't have enough points to get where he needs to be to get over the hump. And they had a lousy New Hampshire, and Denny talked about that as well. If they ran better at New Hampshire, they wouldn't even be in this spot. But whatever, it is what it is at this point. So those three guys pretty much have to win. And like you just said, it's between Logano and Chastain. And Briscoe's in there a little bit. He's plus 21 in seventh position. But I think Briscoe will run fairly well. I'm not worried about him. I really think that this cutoff is going to set up between the 1 and the 22. And you wouldn't think of Logano as a road course racer. Um, just taking a wild guess, where would you expect him to finish at the Roval this weekend?
I think he pull out at least a 20th.
The 20th? Okay. Do you know where he finished last year at the Roval?
I don't because I just remember he only made it through because of Bowman's disqualification. So
But we talked about this before, uh, earlier in the year because that race always catches so much criticism and somewhat rightfully so. He finished eighth at the Roval last year, and he finished second in both stages in the process. And I understand pit strategy can kind of allow you to go for stage points if you want, but they know how to do this. And if I'm not mistaken, he was just within a point or two of Bowman, anyways, um, to make it through that round. And then Bowman got disqualified for for cheating, for not having enough weight in the car. And such a severe penalty, they didn't even appeal it. We'll just keep reminding people of that. Ross Chastain last year at the Roval finished 28th after starting 26th. Sorry, after starting 16th. And I feel like the Trackhouse cars as a whole had more life last year. So I don't count Chastain out. I'm not saying this isn't going to be a battle, but I don't feel like Logano is going to be in a bad spot. I think they know how to accomplish this task.
I think what they need to do
And
is
I
put
also
SVG in one car instead.
yeah, that's not a bad idea. Park the 88, start the one car, and then swap the drivers to Shane so that Chastain gets the points. That's not a bad plan. Don't let Justin Marks watch this podcast. Uh, that might be one of your best ideas ever. Uh, but I went back and looked at some of the other road courses, and it looks like Logano and Chastain have actually finished pretty close to each other within a position or two at several of the other road courses this year. I didn't write down the positions, but that's going to be the battle to watch. And then Chase Briscoe, he just has to have a clean day. I don't think he has to get too crazy with it. Like I said, he's plus 21 on the cut in seventh. The rest of these guys, I think that I'm pretty confident in. William Byron's plus 40, and he had a bad day at Kansas and still ended up uh, with a decent finish. Finished ninth in the race after running terribly throughout the day. That reminds me of the old Jimmy Johnson, Chad Knaus situation, to where it looked like finally there's a day that we've got them down. We can stand on their throats a little bit here, and then they'd come back and finish in the top 10 somewhere. So that makes me a little bit nervous. Christopher Bell's plus 44. Not worried about him. In fact, I think he could win the Roval. Denny Hamlin plus 48. Not worried about him. Don't think he can win the Roval. Kyle Larson plus 54. Obviously not worried about him. And I also think that he can win at the Roval. Wish this was a race on the oval rather than the Roval, but it should be interesting to say the least to see how that ends up shaking out there. You got any thoughts on Charlotte?
No, that's just about the same. I just see what happens, I guess.
Yep. Anything else from the Cup Series?
I don't have anything else.
Uh, Brandon Jones ends up winning the Xfinity Series race. I didn't get to watch it. I know you didn't either because we both went to Sharon Speedway to watch Ryan Blaney's uncle Dale win the World of Outlaws race there. And in Dave's car, if I understand that correctly, got to watch Kenny Schrader race in the Economods. Um, that was a neat Saturday night experience at the racetrack there. And even got to stop by the NASCAR booth. And guys, you should have seen the pile of stuff Ryan hauled away from there. Uh, a bunch of Jeff Gordon merchandise. Uh, but I'm looking forward to Charlotte this week to kind of get through Charlotte, if that makes any sense. I'm nervous as a Joey Logano fan, and just hoping that he ends up making it through this round. And I've said it before, and I'm going to say it again. If Joey Logano makes it through this round after Charlotte, I think he's your champion. Do you still feel that way?
Um, and these Toyotas have been really quick, and I've still on the fence about it, but I think it'll be between Blaney and Logano, which one makes the final four.
You know, this is one more thing that I'm going to say before we close this out because I know we're running out of time. You know, people talk about Logano. If he makes it through, like I just said, if he makes it through, he could be your champion. I don't know why people aren't talking more about Ryan Blaney. Like he's already through. They said that Jonathan Hassler and him were using this as a basically a 400-mile test session for Las Vegas, which is the most important race prior to the championship race. I think the 12 is going to be fast at Vegas. I think he could win Martinsville. He could certainly win Talladega. He could win any of the three races in the next round. And I feel really good about Martinsville. And then if he makes it to Phoenix and Logano's not there, he'd be my number one choice. So I think the 12 is super, super dangerous right now. Do you agree?
Yeah, I have the 12 over the 22 right now, if I had to pick between the two.
I don't think I take the 12 over the 22 if they get to Phoenix.
And that's where we disagree.
All right. Next week it is Cup and Xfinity and trucks, all three at the Roval. And we'll make sure that you follow us on our social medias on X at Garage Area, Instagram at the Garage Area, on TikTok at the.garage.area. Follow me on X, Adam White _22, and Ryan at Ryan WW924. And we will talk to everybody after the Roval.